Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another recap video. So this week was also very slow for me. I took a few trades. I think I took about 6 trades this week. 2 worked out to be some sort of profit and we had a couple break evens and a couple losers. I think 1 or 2 losers. So first trade for me this week was AUDCAD. It was taken on the 1 hour time frame. It was a short position. This trade is still running. I closed half of the position at 1.6R. The rest is still open running, right? So the entry criteria for this trade was pretty simple. It was just a pullback entry based off of a 50% fib retracement with hidden divergence forming. All right, so this was the trade at the time of entering. All right, so we kind of have this level here. This was a kind of 50% pullback. We had some initial rejection forming, so I actually set a limit for this trade. So just jump to the chart to show you guys the position. So it's this trade just here. So we have just here on the H1 time frame. Well, actually on the higher time frames, we were previously in this massive uptrend structure, right? And we've been in this uptrend structure for a while. However, we recently broke this this trend line just, well, kind of like this trend line just here, right? The break I was kind of looking at was this break here, and then we failed to retrace. We failed to retrace even to kind of make equal high or higher high. So started forming lower highs from this point on, and all this sell action has been very strong, right? So we have strong sell, slow retracement, strong sell, slow retracement, strong sell, slow retracement. So I was kind of just hoping for that same sort of move to kind of play out, right? Which in actuality it kind of did, right? We have on the H1 time frame, we also had from this high here to this high here, we had price making a lower high. On the chart we have this lower high forming, but on the RSI we have this higher high forming, right? So we had pretty good confluence for this trade, so I was happy setting a limit here, and ultimately it kind of worked out, right? So it almost hit that final target of the minus 382 on the fib, but it didn't quite get there. It also lined up nicely with the previous low. Just look at kind of lined up nicely with this previous low here, which would have been my target just based off of price action anyway. So that was pretty good. This trade's still running. We'll see if this, it can't really be called a trend line just yet, but I just connected this high to this high and extended it into the future. So we'll see if price respects this trend line, if it kind of comes back to this area. If it does, and we get that further drop. We've seen some nice liquidity spikes here on the 1 hour time frame. So hopefully we'll get some kind of a drop on this next week, or the only thing that's kind of going against this trade for me is if you look on the daily, a couple days ago we had that kind of that pin bar on the daily, right? We had that kind of bullish pin bar close on the daily. So we may actually see price reverse from here. Who knows, right? But it kind of rejected that low just there on the daily. So I don't know. I'll see what price does during the week. If it pulls up and takes me out at break even, then it's all good. All right. So the next trade for me this week was on NZDJPY. It was very, very similar in setup to the AUDCAD. All right. So here, some similar setup to AUDCAD, hidden divergence forming, 50% retracement or 50% pullback, confluence with the previous level. Once price broke above the level, I decided to close the trade off. Happy with how I managed the trade. All right, so this was the trade here at the time of entering. All right, so we had some massive impulsive sell-off. Originally, I was actually looking for buys on this pair, but because of the price action that I was seeing, I kind of changed my bias to a short position. We also had price kind of pulling back to this kind of major, well, it may not be a major level, but you know, we had this pretty decent level here that price was pulling back into, right? And then this was the trade at the time of closing. Cool, so we had price obviously disrespected the level completely, broke past this. It's not really well, I just kind of connected the highs as usual, but we broke past the highs and we pushed way up and then was kind of testing it as support, right? So resistance turn support. And you know, at this point, once we had this kind of price break above, if I was around the chart at the time, then I would have closed it off just here, but I wasn't. So I just waited for price to kind of make that pullback. I was hoping it did, and it did. And once it did make the pullback, I decided to close the trade off. So I'll just jump to the chart to talk you through the trade and what I saw. So NZDJPY. All right, so we've clearly been in this uptrend for a while, right? So what I looked at was, you see, just on the daily, just here, I guess we could, yeah, we could kind of pull a line like that, maybe kind of connect this low to this low, and that would have been your third touch. Then we had this massive bearish candle, which just completely disrespected the level. So that's what I was looking at for potential short, and right now price is kind of coming back to test the base of that trend line, so I'll be keeping an eye on that actually. So I'll just leave this trend line in here for now. But anyway, so on the 1 hour time frame, I saw price kind of pulling back into this level. We kind of had this double top formation just here, so that's one push up, resistance, second resistance, and then if you look on the RSI, we were forming that kind of lower high, right? So price on the chart, we're forming equal highs, but we're forming lower highs on the RSI. Together with, if we just pull a fib from this high here, fib from this high to the low, right? So this ended up being a nice 50% level. So I just set a limit here at the 50% level. And then once price got to the level, it actually looked okay at the time. So we had that kind of rejection candle activating the trade just there. And then we had this bearish candle just after it. But straight away, we kind of had this bullish candle that just completely disrespected the level and broke above. I wasn't at the chart at this time. If I was, I would have closed the trade off just on this candle just here, right? In addition, we kind of pulled back, testing it as support with rejection, and then it started to push higher. So this would have been a very good area for me to close the trade off, but I wasn't on the chart at the time. All right, so then price pushed higher, and I was just kind of waiting to see if it would come back to the level again, kind of confluence with this trend line that was forming. So we just connected this low to this low here, pulled it into the future, and that seemed like a good area for me to kind of close the position off if it was to pull back. And you know, so said, so done. Close the trade off just here, minimizing the loss. I would have taken a full loss on it if I didn't manage the trade correctly. So I'm happy with how I managed the trade. And the level that I looked at trading off of, it turned out to be a pretty good level, right? So we have it being obviously respected here as kind of resistance, support, right? So if I stuck with my original bias of long positions instead of switching my bias to short position because of this break, you know, these would have actually been some pretty good long entries. So that would have been a good long entry just there, and this would have probably been another decent long entry just here. But I switched my bias to short because of the way that price broke that longer term trend line and how it was retracing to the level. I actually thought it would reverse from this kind of, you know, level just here. So, but you know, it didn't work out. But anyway, I'm happy with how I managed the trade, so worked out okay for me. So the next trade I took was here on AUDNZD. It was a short position taken on the 15-minute time frame. It was a counter trend trade based off of daily trend exhaustion. So there's some trend exhaustion being shown on the daily time frame. I entered after price broke out impulsively on the 15-minute time frame and retraced to the breakout level. I moved my stops to break even at 1 hour, and then the trade was stopped out at break even. I'll just jump to AUDNZD. AUDNZD. Jump to the daily time frame. All right, so this is the exhaustive price action I was seeing on the daily time frame, right? We had lots of upper wick rejection after price has kind of been in this trend for it's not been a long while, but you know, it was showing me some signs of weakness just here. So we had this massive candle pushing up with rejection, then we had this kind of doji with long rejection wicks at the top, and we had these small body candles kind of pushing back into these highs, and you know, just leaving those long upper wicks. So you know, I was looking at it thinking, hey, you know, this thing looks like it's going to make a pullback. So if we look at the 1 hour time frame, right, we then had price, every time price tried to push higher, right, so we have price trying to push higher, it's struggling to go higher, but then when it sells, it was selling strong, struggling to go higher, and then it's selling strongly. So I was just figuring, you know what, price was forming these lows just here around this kind of 1.9 level, right, 1.09 level, and then after all this kind of wick rejection at support, we had this one bearish candle taking out all of this price action just here, right? So all of this price action just here was taken out with this one bearish candle just here. So then I dropped to the 15-minute time frame. All right, so here, this is the, I think these candles here, if I could just select it. So we have, oh, yeah, so we have these candles here, these 15-minute candles, that these candles form that 1 hour candle as just showing you. So once we had this massive breakthrough, breaking past this level of, well, I guess you call it a pretty decent level of support, we had price kind of pull back up and form this rejection, right? So once I saw that, I decided to take a short position, and it worked out pretty good. You know, I didn't close any of the position. You know, once price pushed into profit, I think kind of around, let's see if I find the level. Oh. Yeah, so yeah, this level just here, which was pretty much 1 hour, right? So we have this high here together with, you know, this resistance turn support. We had this wick rejection, so I figured this was a pretty decent level. Once we broke past it to put my stops to break even, and we broke past it on this candle just here. So we broke past it on that candle just there. Once that happened, I decided to move my stops to break even, and then we just had price kind of obviously retraced and took me out, right? But again, I had my level correctly, right? So I had my level correctly drawn. We saw price push back into the level that I traded off of, formed resistance, pushed down again, came back up one more time, kind of forming this kind of double top scenario, and then we had the move I was actually looking for. So if I didn't move my stops to break even, this would have been a pretty good trade. Would have been 3.3R returns on this trade, but you know, I stuck to my trading rules, moved my stops to break even when I was supposed to, but you know, the price just didn't have the momentum at the time to push them to my final targets. So I was happy with how I managed the trade, but you know, it's obviously I missed out on some pretty decent profits, but you know, it is what it is. So anyway, moving on. So this was my first poor trade for the week. I think it was my only poor trade really. So it was taken here on Chef JPY. It was a long position taken on the 1 hour time frame. I was just kind of focusing on the lower time frames for this trade, right? So it was a break and retest on the lower time frames, but there was no confluence, and I was trading against the higher time frame structure. This was a low quality trade taken on my high risk account only with low exposure. So I didn't really expose myself too much to the market, and I only took it on my designated account for higher risk trades. So at least that was okay. I need some self-assessment here. This was effectively gambling. I should not have really taken this trade, right? So this was the trade here at the time of entering, right? So we had this kind of minor uptrend structure happening here on the 1 hour time frame, and I saw this level being formed. Price spiked beneath the level, broke back above the level, and I thought that would have been a pretty decent trading level. So I entered a position here looking for that kind of upside, right? Continued upside. And then this was a trade at the time of closing. All right, so I mean, it stopped out during the night. So this is obviously when I woke up the next morning. Right, so I'll just jump to the chart quickly to talk through the trade. So that was Chef JPY. Where is it? Chef JPY. All right, so that was this trade here, right? This first trade just here. So we had this minor 1 hour uptrend structure happening just here, right? So I looked at this trading level right here, kind of these highs just here in combination with this kind of support just here. All right, once price broke beneath with what I thought was a liquidity grab, broke back above with lots of momentum, and then once price came back to the level, if I just pulled it, just this candle just here that came back to the level and showed some rejection, I thought that was a pretty decent entry level, right? But if we look at the higher time frame, right, we have on the daily, we actually just been stuck in this range, right? But more recently, we've even been forming these lower highs, right? So you've got this high here, lower high here, we got this low, we got a lower low. Not a massive lower low, but a lower low nonetheless, right? But I was kind of thinking we might just close the gap and have that to touch trend line just here. So I was hoping for price to kind of push back up into this level. But I shouldn't, this isn't a trade I should have really taken, right? At least not based off of that logic, which is a trend following strategy. So I should not have taken this trade here. That was a poor execution for me. All right. So there's another trade I took on Chef JPY. So since we're on this chart, I'll just talk you through it. But before I do, I'll just jump to my journal. So this was this trade here. So it was Chef JPY. It was taken on the 15-minute time frame. It was a long position. This worked out to be a okay trade. So I closed half profit at 1 hour, and then closed the rest of the position here at 2.04 hour. All right, so it's a lower time frame trade, and it was a late entry after 5-minute to trend line touch, right? After some regular divergence was formed, with an ascending triangle possibly forming. I took half profit at 1 hour, closed trade off on Friday after a long period of consolidation. So this was the trade here at the time of entering. So we have this kind of ascending triangle being formed, right? We have equal highs being formed, but higher lows. So I was looking for that kind of breakout of this ascending triangle, right? And then this was my trade here at the time of closing. So we had just price kind of consolidating here for a while. Once price made this final push and had this kind of pullback just here, that's when I closed the trade off. All right, so I'll just jump to the chart to talk you through it. So if you look at the 15-minute time frame, this is a completely different entry strategy than my usual trend following strategy, right? So what I looked at, if you look here on the 15-minute time frame, so you have this lower low being formed, right? So this low here is quite significantly lower than this low just here. If you look on the RSI, we're having divergence, right? So we have a higher high on the RSI. So once I saw that being formed, I looked at the 5-minute time frame. I'll just get rid of this. Yeah, so I looked at the 5-minute time frame and it just pulled a trend line from there, right? So I pulled a trend line from the divergence low to the next low that was formed. So I would have liked to enter on the third touch of this trend line because of the potential of this ascending triangle being formed. That's what I was seeing. To touch trend line, and I was just looking for that breakout, right? But I caught the trade a little bit late, which was just as this candle was pushing just here. This bullish candle just here. I kind of entered halfway on that bullish move, and the reason why I entered is because I was still seeing at least a 1.5R return on this trade, right? So the target I was looking to move my stops to break even at was these previous highs just here, which would have been a minimum of 1-to-1, which is at least what I need to see. So that would have been 1-to-1, so that was okay. And then we kind of had these previous highs here, which would have been my initial target, right? So in actuality, what I did, I just closed half my position off once we broke past this level, broke past these previous highs, and then I just decided to leave the trade to run, right, to see if we could have kind of met these previous highs just here, right, these highs just here. But then when I woke up the next morning, we just went through all this period of consolidation. Then we kind of had this massive indecision kind of happening here afterwards anyway. So I closed the trade off after we had this bullish candle just here, and then price kind of formed this pullback. Once we started to pull back, I decided to close the trade off. What I would have liked to see is I would have liked to see price on that bullish move. I would have liked to see price break past these highs, right? But we didn't. Instead, it pulled back, and I just decided, because it was Friday, together with it being a bank holiday, you know, being Good Friday, I just decided, you know, it'll probably be a very low liquidity day. So I just decided to close the trade off. And I mean, I'm happy I did, because afterwards all we had was just massive indecision, and then we had this crazy candle here that closed off the day on Friday. So I'm happy I wasn't part of that. So that was that trade. It's an okay trade. I'm happy with it. I would have liked to get my entry down here, which would have been a much higher risk to reward trade. That would have been you know, a 5-hour trade versus a 2-hour trade, right? But it is what it is. You know, I'm happy I got some profit out the trade anyway, and it met my minimum trading criteria. And then the last trade, which was kind of a mistake as well. I'll just mark this in red actually. All right, so I mean, it was a valid setup, but I shouldn't have taken the entry. So it was a trade here on GBPAUD. It was taken on a 1-hour time frame. It was a long position. There's a break and retest of a daily and H4 level after a liquidity spike in the direction of the main trend, right? Decided to close the trade off early after reanalysis. Previous daily candle closed with a bearish pin and low volume for the holidays. So this was the trade here at the time of entering. All right, so we had this kind of minor level here, which is kind of the zoomed in version, but the level pulls all the way to the in the past, and then we had price dip beneath the level, come back above, and then started to bounce with rejection. This was that liquidity candle I was looking at. That was my nice trading candle just there. So this was the trade at the time of closing, which was literally like an hour later. All right, so we had that liquidity grab, price started to push in my direction, and I just decided to close the trade off. All right, so I'll just jump to the chart to talk you through the trade. So that was GBPAUD, and it was taken on the 1-hour time frame. All right, so you can see here the level pulled all the way back in the past, right? So this if I just pull this over here, this is kind of the trading level I was looking at just here, right? So that's the level I was looking at. But on the zoomed in 1 hour time frame, I just undo that. Once you kind of look at the price action on the 1 hour time frame, we kind of had this minor little pullback here, and then the impulsive move past the level, right? So we had that small little counter trend move, and then, you know, price moved past the level. So this was the trading level for me, right? And you can see here, price came back to it, respected it, dipped beneath the level, broke back above, and that for me was all I needed to see, right? So once I saw that price action, the dip beneath, what I look at it as is like a liquidity grab, just as I spoke about before. Once I see that happen and it breaks back above the level, and then I saw this massive candle here, possibly taking out a bunch of stops, that was all I needed to see to get an entry, right? And I took my entry just off the close of that candle, and I decided to close the trade off just after 1 hour later after this candle closed. The reason why I decided to close the trade off is, one, because it was Friday. There's no point in me entering the trade on a Friday. Normally I would take a trade on Fridays, but this Friday was Good Friday, and you know, there was low liquidity in the market, and there were just some crazy spikes happening across a few pairs, and we had some spread widening on a few brokers, and I just figured, you know what, let me just limit exposure to the market over the weekend. And in addition to that, if you look at the daily time frame, we also had this massive bearish pin bar close the previous day, which is something I don't really like to see, right? I don't like to see a big bearish candle close, you know, well, I don't like to see a counter trend candle formation. So if I'm looking to go long, I don't want to see a candle like this, right? I'd like to see small kind of retracements back and then trade off of the level and just look for that continued momentum, right? Kind of something like this, right? So you have this massive push, and then you have these small candles kind of pulling back. That is the type of price action I'd probably like to see, right? So push, slow retracement, right? Push, slow retracement. I don't really like to see these big, this big bearish candle. So I just decided to close the trade off. And ultimately, I'm happy with my decision. So I'll just look for re-entries maybe next week, depending on what price does and if we're seeing some pretty good price action. And yeah, that was pretty much it. Yeah, it wasn't the best trading week. You know, obviously made some mistakes. I had some poor decision making at a few points. But you know, I kind of pulled it back, right? I think I managed the positions well, closing them off. I could have done better with the management of this EURJPY trade. I shouldn't have taken this trade at all. Not even on my high risk account. I shouldn't have taken this trade because there was no real trading opportunity there for me. So that was a bit of poor analysis on my part. But otherwise, you know, in pretty slow market conditions, I'm happy to have been surviving. Survived this week actually turned out to be a little bit profitable. So anytime you make some profits out the market, it's always a good scenario. But yeah, that's it for me. That's it for this week. As usual, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Obviously, if you like what you see, feel free to subscribe if you're not subscribed. And if you think anybody will gain some value from the videos, feel free to share it with them. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow.